I think this might be one of the most conflicted videos I've ever put out on the subject. 5 years ago, most comments under any official Tomb Raider post were from people asking for remasters of the classic Tomb Raider games. It felt like a pipe dream, a distant hope, or one of the deepest desires of my nerdy little Raider heart splashed across social media. Skip forwards 3 years and the unthinkable happened. We didn't just get one, but 3 incredible remasters. Afterwards, I started to push real hard for more remasters out of a sense of preservation. It was important to give that treatment to the entire core design set to preserve Lara's legacy of the first 6 games. While it felt like the closest we would ever get for that to happen, I was still posting about it from a place of hope, rather than actual belief that it would happen. But here we are, 2025, able to play a second remaster trilogy in the form of Last Revelation, Chronicles, and The Angel of Darkness. But is that a good thing? Yes, of course, it's an overwhelmingly brilliant thing. I played on PS5, so that's what this review is effectively going to cover, and there are some fantastic things about the game, and there are some things that I could nitpick about, so I'm going to try and cover as much as I can. Both Tomb Raider 4 and 5 immediately smack you with fairly beautiful new visuals. The updated character models and more realistic environments were, in many cases, more than I was hoping for. Honestly, I can't fault a single thing I've seen in terms of new geometry to the levels. From the giant statues in the Valley of the Kings, to the details on the tarpaulin covering train cargo, to the golden blobs growing out of the Philosopher's Stone, and not to mention the hexagonal volcanic basalt chimneys on Black Isle. Quite honestly, I think Tomb Raider 4 and 5 present a new gold standard for remasters in the gaming industry. The love and attention that's been poured into these games is wonderful, and it's really, really clear to see that it was made by fans for fans. Some parts were genuinely enough to make me weep with joy. Set's tomb chamber. The train, sand in the wind, the train, Karnak's columns, holy crap, the train? The Cosmos puzzle in the library, leaning into what I really hoped that it would look like, sort of closer to Final Fantasy VII's Observatory. Then the Horus Chamber actually looking like something from Final Fantasy as well. Absolutely beautiful work. But saying that, are the visuals perfect? Not quite. There are still a few things that I hope can be changed. For example, early levels in Tomb Raider 4 were exceptionally dark, and flares barely did anything. I actually had to change the settings on my TV in order to see anything, and even then still use flares. Contrast seemed to be a little flat in places where the original was much bolder and more exciting to see. A couple of notable places in this regard were around the Alexandria area. The tunnel leading to the coastal ruins used to be struck with light beams, and the sharp contrast in light playing across the Pharos Temple of Isis entrance is very muted now, which I found a little disappointing, as I think the original presentation is one of my favourite starts to a Tomb Raider level ever. While these examples aren't big issues, they're more of a personal preference. I just think a more daring and bold approach to lighting and colour in some places would be more exciting. As for controls, I'm actually now more into the modern controls, surprisingly, because I didn't expect it. The tank controls are imprinted on my brain and interwoven with my DNA, but honestly, I've had almost almost zero issues with the modern controls. Modern feels more relaxed, it feels quicker, it feels smoother in a lot of ways, but there is quite an issue when the camera changes to a fixed position, and the controls, I think, they seem to stick in the direction that it was from the previous camera angle, and it makes her moveset ridiculously challenging. I just found myself running in little circles, just trying to make Lara run in a straight line or trying to get out a little corridor. I also initially had trouble when being forced to crawl backwards out of a crawl space into a grab, as Lara always faces the direction you press. So if you're trying to make her go backwards and you press back, she will face towards you, so you can't back out of it. And it took finding out from a fellow Tomb Raider fan that holding the look button allows her to actually do this. And it reminded me that that was actually the same in Tomb Raider 1, 2, 3 remasters. But once I had that quick fix down, I was set. Now, I did encounter a few issues in Tomb Raider 4 in terms of bugs or glitches. One that really stuck out to me was in Cleopatra's Palaces when you're using the wind-up beetle. All of a sudden, it was luminous green, like highlighter green. Now, before release, I set down a wish list so I could compare to the final product. So now I'm going to hand you over to past Chris. Hello, and welcome to a joint Raidercast video with me and Clue, who jumped up on my seat as I was preparing the camera and doesn't want to move, so who am I to move him? Anyway, we are now less than a week away from getting our hands on the remasters, and I will tell you of the things that I really hope to see in the remasters. Let's go. Initially, in The Last Revelation and Chronicles, one of my absolute top things that I really hope they do is fix the damn ropes, because that physics sucked. It really sucked. Recently when Alf was playing through it, he had so much trouble using those ropes, and I remember having so much trouble using those ropes.
Fuck. Oh. Fuck. Oh. Fuck. Okay. Didn't know you could do that.
Oof. Just a little tweak on the physics just to, you know, help the players out, I think would go a long way. Are we gonna get it? I think they did not. However, a simple guide popping up during the tutorial to display the controls actually went a long way, and I didn't really have much of a problem with them this time. However, tank controls allowed lining up successive rope jumps much easier than the more fluid modern controls. I actually had to switch to the tank controls to pass the series of ropes in Catacombs. Something else that I noticed while Alf was playing Tomb Raider 4 was, at least during the first half of the game, a lot of time was spent getting stuck on niggly little floor tiles underwater. Narrow corridors underwater, and Lara would just get caught on them, breath would go down, etc. Again, I don't know what they would have to do to fix this. I hope they manage it. If not, probably a me problem, but in that regard, I hope they fixed it. Did it happen? Yes, this seems to have been rectified. At least using modern controls made swimming through those tight spaces much easier, and I don't think Lara got caught on a single misaligned floor tile. Thankfully, no drowning incidents for her this time. Here's one for 4, 5, and 6. Nicely upscaled FMV. 1, 2, and 3 did go a little way to upscaling the visuals on the FMVs, but I think a few people pointed out they could have been done a little bit sharper, a little bit better. Given that that was over a year ago, hopefully they've made use of new techniques or something, and the cutscenes for 4, 5, and 6 are nice and crisp, nice and sharp, especially The Last Revelation, because that game has some of my favourite cutscenes of the entire series. Whew. Did we get it? I think the same technology was used as in 1, 2, 3, which is honestly a so-so result.
Lara, you are alive. I feared for you. What's Von Croy has the amulet.
Sometimes the FMVs looked a little crisper, sometimes they didn't. One thing I noticed was the quality of the intro FMV in AOD wasn't as good as the final FMV in AOD, which led me to think that maybe lighting actually does play a huge part in the process of making these videos, and low lighting doesn't work as well. It did the job was the feeling I got for this, rather than any real feelings of being super impressed. There's something else that I've seen that we are getting, in 4 and 5 in particular, the more sort of 3D-fication, not a word, of environments, particularly the room where Lara first gets the Amulet of Horus. A lot of the side alcoves are now actual 3D spaces with 3D statues inside. This is something that I really hope is present a lot throughout the entire game. I know 4 in particular is absolutely gargantuan, and I feel like it would benefit the whole game and not just like the sort of the main areas and like the set pieces. Please? Did we get it? We absolutely did get this. One thing I was so impressed about with the level of detail of Tomb Raider 4 and 5 that didn't even need to be done, but it was done anyway. Those alcoves, the 3D reliefs. Part of the walls in Chronicles. Statues. Extra lighting in Cairo, high up windows that Lara is never going to get close to. They've been crafted so nicely to make these environments more realistic and to a much higher standard than 1, 2, 3 were when they first came out, before patches. Supremely happy with this treatment in 4 and 5. Now, here's where it gets challenging. I think this might be one of the most conflicted videos I've ever put out on the subject, but stick with me and I will explain why. The most immediate and clearest upgrade in the game we have is the primary character model redesigns. Lara, Curtis, Boaz, Muller, Eckhart, they all look really good. Like, really, really good. The reintegration of the initial tutorial area, complete with missing voice lines, was a joy to play after wondering for so many years how that section would actually play out. Then of course the controls, and I stuck with the modern controls all the way through AOD. I was so surprised how well they worked, and I've repeatedly recommended people try them out. And to some of those people's surprise, they also had a better time of the game as a result. Lara went where I wanted to go, when I wanted her to go there. There were certainly things that I wanted to be improved though, which I'll get into in a minute. Now on to the Angel of Darkness proper. There are a few things that I have such high hopes for. They've said they're fixing the controls. I really hope they fix the controls. If you followed my channel for a while, you'll know how much I absolutely love that game, despite its flaws. So any improvement will be most welcome, but I really hope they've smoothed out a lot of the control issues, you know. How well did that work? The official channels were pretty confident in insisting that people try out the modern controls for AOD, and I've got to say, yes, I see why. As I said, I found modern controls for AOD to be very effective and very smooth, although the action key being split into action and secondary seems to have confused the hell out of so many people. It was the same with the 1, 2, 3 remastered modern controls, and honestly, I can't see a single good reason for it. Action key has always been interact. It's the button you press to use Lara's hands. Whether firing a weapon, or punching something, or grabbing a ledge, or picking up an item, or pulling a switch. Just one button. I've yet to have read the benefit of splitting it across 2 buttons, but I would be happy to hear any explanations or reasons why anyone thinks it is a good idea. In terms of environment stuff with Angel of Darkness, Again, I'd kind of like the same treatment to be given that was given to 4 and 5, or 1, 2, 3, in terms of additional 3D bits to the environment. Angel of Darkness already was very 3D compared to the previous 5 games, but there were still bits that could have been made 3D. Like, for example, in the biological research facility, there are bits where are these like really ornate fences and the texture was flat. That could just be made 3D. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know the process that they go to actually touch up these games, so maybe it's not possible to just insert these things, but given how we've seen a difference in that initial area of the game, maybe they can change these things. If not initially, a bit further down the line with a patch, kind of like they did with, for example, the picture frames in Maria Doria in Tomb Raider 2. Nice little update, nice little extra pop of 3D. I know we've seen in some of the teaser trailers that that isn't quite the case yet, but now since launch, did we get it? We did not. It was clear that quite a bit more time was spent on Tomb Raider 4 and 5 in comparison. As AOD was originally already more 3D and detailed than Tomb Raider 4 and 5, when the AOD Remaster presented 2D objects and textures, it stood out even more. Some secondary NPCs hadn't received a remaster, which was, for the most part, fine. It was never as jarring as during that first Cabal meeting cutscene where everyone, apart from Gunderson, had had a makeover and he stumbled out onto screen looking like a baked potato. Though it was noticeable that some models hadn't even received HD textures, it felt as though it was a direct PS2 port of their characters, which unfortunately in some places made the game feel more like part remaster, part port, which would have been an exceptional port if it had been marketed as a port, but it was marketed as a remaster, and with that came a certain level of expectation that some feel it didn't meet. Now, I don't know if there are issues with adding to the level geometry in the Angel of Darkness. It would take a lot of work to go through every single 2D area and add 3D over the top of it. The fences, the plant life, even some enemies getting the remaster treatment would be great, considering some models in Tomb Raider 4 and 5 looked better than the ones in the Angel of Darkness. Some environmental models could really have benefited from smoothing out or a little adjustment to make them look less angular and perhaps more natural, much in the way that environments from 4 and 5 benefited from the same thing. Nothing super dramatic across the board, just some TLC. Now another thing is that they've said that they're going to be adding some deleted voice lines, some unused voice lines from the actors, and what I would like this to do is actually bolster the story, give bits more context, give things a little more explanation, make some characters known about before they appear at certain pivotal moments of the storyline. You know who I'm talking about. You know what? Even at this stage, I will just take a clearer picture of them in the dossiers. But yeah, how did that pan out? They delivered on this front. There are a whole bunch of extra lines re-added to the game. However, the extra voice lines didn't add much in terms of clarifying some aspects of the story, but they did provide some immediate context for some areas.
Just for once, it'd be nice to walk into a room and not have the statues try to kill me.
What did help in respect to the story is additional notes in Von Croy's journal and some additional notes in Eckhart's lab, which hammered home the point that the Black Alchemist was actually planning to double-cross the Nephilim. Now this is a big one for me. I really desperately want for the combat to have been a little overhauled. A lot of the combat in AOD was janky, to say the least. Lara's sort of awkward, sidesteppy, circular motion as she goes around. My god, I want that done away with. I don't know. Let's see what they do with it. I really hope it's not there, but if it is, gotta make do with it. My ideal scenario would be if they literally just put the combat from the first 5 into 6 as a replacement. I don't know how they would do that. It's not my job. Maybe it's not possible. So, that being such a big wish, did I get it or am I disappointed? It happened, at least partially. While the combat for 1 to 5 wasn't transposed into AOD, the combat was wildly improved, but only by using modern controls. Those who are sticking to tank controls are seemingly having to make peace with Lara being stuck in those annoying little hops, but modern controls allow Lara almost complete freedom of movement with weapons drawn in the vicinity of an enemy. She can run past them, turn to face a different way, and isn't caught twisting unnaturally and awkwardly on the spot. And the dual pistols, actually 2 pairs of dual pistols, make a welcome return if you know where to look for them and are so fun to play with. Curtis's Chiragai, while a bit clunky, is powerful enough to make good use of, and use it I did. Because it really helped differentiate the Curtis sections and the Lara sections. It didn't feel as much of a no-reason change of character this time. He has his own moves and abilities and feel, so in that regard the remaster really brought him to life. There are some things that I would love to see in the Angel of Darkness as bonus content, that being the areas that we saw were built but weren't included in the original, namely Castle Kriegler, maybe even the lab from Cappadocia, even that little corridor bit with the giant statue and Lara swinging off the banner to kick it over. Whether they're included as just sort of main menu bonus section type things like they did in Soul Reaver, that would be lovely. Especially if we can run around in these areas, even if they're disconnected from the rest of the game, that would be... I still think you can actually include that giant statue banner swinging bit in the Temple of Ancients when you go through the grid, and you got that amazing room with all of the reflections in that corridor and the dart trap. Just add it onto the end. Lara then kicks through and you get into the Hall of Seasons. Takes nothing away from the game, adds an awesome bit. But if it's present, I'll be really happy, even as a bonus. Did we get it? This didn't happen. It's unfortunate, and honestly, I'd be surprised if such big changes actually get patched in the future. However, it did make me take a little step back to reconsider what I was actually hoping for and where the line between remaster and remake is drawn. I think the known inclusion of the starting tutorial area gave me a little extra hope that we'd see more parts like that. However, it's the difference between adding in extra things versus restoring what's already there but obstructed, as in the case for the tutorial. However, considering there are so many assets readily available to view for AOD, pieces of art, concept art, storyboards, and the aforementioned built environments like Castle Kriegler and the Cappadocian Lab, if they could be seen disconnected by themselves, like Soul Reaver allowed, it's quite a shame that we didn't really get any extras for these games. So this is where it comes to the more conflicted part, because for the first few days I felt like I was being gaslit by a huge number of people, and it really sucked. Because I was living in my own little world, enjoying AOD more than I have ever enjoyed it before, and I'd post some pictures or videos online, and I'd be faced with so many comments along the lines of, "This game is a mess, this game is unplayable, the controls are awful, the game looks like trash, she won't grab, it keeps crashing, it's still broken." And I sincerely hadn't encountered a single bug. Not a single glitch. For 5 days, I was having the time of my life playing a decently polished version of AOD, where the controls were better than ever. Sharper graphics than ever. With controls as smooth as butter, I was actually navigating the precarious rigging of Le Serpent Rouge with ease, to the degree that I was actually laughing out loud at how simple it was, parkouring around the Tomb of Ancients in a way I'd only dreamt of. Then going online and reading about these apparently buggy, glitchy, awful experiences. I felt like I was going mad, and worst still, I'd have to put out a review praising this amazing experience I'd had, likely hidden in an ocean of discontented videos, making me either look like I wore rose-tinted specs, that I was a sycophant, or a liar, or all three. But that was my honest gameplay experience, for 5 whole days. On the 6th day, I encountered the quick load audio hiss that was commonly reported, but nothing else. Were there improvements I wanted to see? Yes. Were they improvements that would make the game more playable? No. Were they cosmetic and done for the beautification of AOD? Yes. Yet, I'd be neglecting the obvious necessity to improve the game, and going against the very reason why I wanted these remasters in the first place if I didn't mention the glitches and bugs. In terms of these remasters or ports or remakes, whatever, I think as well a big part of it is that it's preservation. It's not just for the sake of, you know, they're there for people who want them. They have earned their place in gaming history.
Yes.
They're important to a lot of people, and they are the legacy of a nearly 30-year-old series. It's a big deal for games, like, not even to mention like what Lara did for games in general. It's just, I think it's important to preserve them as well. Because if these games are remastered in order for preservation, for everyone to play them, then they need to be playable for everyone. And it seemingly hasn't been a great experience for everyone. Just asking for a few people to list the issues they're having, you can check the post on my Instagram. It's the one of AOD Lara holding the word problems. As a sample of the actual problems it lists, we have sliding down a slope, audio continues to play on loop, PS4 version crashes and achievements aren't working, sound goes really loud suddenly when reloading, picking up objects makes Lara uncontrollable and requires a reload, tilting the camera mode controls very unpredictably, Lara not grabbing ledges after pipes, disembodied enemy voices, the game crashing on ladders, Lara falling through ladders, sound issues where Lara is extremely quiet and the ambience is too loud, Boaz fight glitches and requires a rematch, people are still confused by action versus secondary, which honestly needs addressing, and more. But this highlights the myriad and varied issues people are experiencing, and the fact that it is important to let the publishers and developers know. It's important to post online about these things, go into detail, specifically what console you're playing on, where the issue is, how it happened, and extremely importantly, tag Aspyr, tag Saber. Let the people who can fix these things know what they need to fix, and let the publishers know that their product needs maintenance. Issues in 1, 2, 3 were patched this way, and it will require some pushing to get 4, 5 and 6 polished with patches too. It likely also wouldn't hurt to comment about patches underneath every video, underneath every post the official channels make, just to really hammer the point home. Now the elephant in the room has been addressed. I seriously had such a good time on AOD, more so than ever before, and if you know anything about my videos, you'll know how much I enjoyed it before. A little addition I was delighted to see was the reintroduction of subtle eye movement among the characters in the cutscenes, bringing them to life in a way that we hadn't seen before. It injected more of the personality we knew was there, but perhaps had to previously project onto the characters. It was a wonderful thing, and it really adds a lot to these great cutscenes. My ranking of favourite Tomb Raider games is Tomb Raider 1 and 4, and then I think 3, then Underworld, then AOD. Or rather it was. Because with the utter enjoyment I have had from this game over the last week, it's now Tomb Raider 1 and 4, and then AOD. It's honestly ramped it up further than I could have hoped for, and whether the world feels it or not, for me, it really feels like the AOD redemption era right now. So now for a moment, let me tell you something else that I would love to see, no matter how delulu or wishful. AOD is such a massive story. I won't get into the entire iceberg of that story world here, but suffice to say, it's in many ways more Curtis's story than Lara's. And one thing I'd actually love to be able to do is play as Curtis throughout the game. just by switching characters. And I don't mean a skin, just so that it's Curtis running around with all of Lara's animations. I mean actual Curtis, with all of his own moves and animations, getting to play as him, exploring his ancestral haunts. The last of the Lux Veritatis getting to roam around Lux Veritatis strongholds would be so cool. However, on a hopefully more realistic note, I think now patches to fix bugs and glitches should be the priority, as well as improvements to NPCs, and then, if there's enough clamour, to build some environmental improvements. Give us back those reflections. Inject some 3D into some of those bits that need extra care. But it is in this regard that I wonder about the future of remasters. If a remaster of Legend, Anniversary and Underworld is something that we might even see. If that decision is in our hands, or if that's a decision that one way or another has already been made. I will happily help to make a push for those in a few months, however it would be with realistic expectations. People have now seen what sort of treatment the more modern looking games receive, as long as people aren't expecting rebuilt geometry, extra areas, or much beyond slightly improved character models and hopefully some refining of controls and camera, then if we ever get those remasters, hopefully fans wouldn't have got their hopes up too high. Some of that might have got a little heavier than you might be used to from my videos, but it needed to be said. We're a year away from the series' 30th anniversary. Big things are coming on the horizon. If we don't know anything about the next main game within the next 12 months, I will be massively surprised. But for now, I'm pinching myself and rejoicing the fact that Lara's original 6 adventures, that her legacy from her original creators are in our hands once again. I hope we see some patches over the coming months, but for now, I'm going to sit back, relax, and enjoy the Janelle Elliott Renaissance. Happy raiding. Glibby, you want to say goodbye? You want to say goodbye? Confused? Oh, baby, who's confused? It's all right. I'll leave you to sleep.